From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. Some breaking news to share. Alabama Secretary of Commerce Greg Canfield will be stepping down from his cabinet post effective at the end of the year. Canfield has led the Department of Commerce as Alabama's lead economic developer for 12 years across 2 administrations. Most recently, he crafted a legislative package known as the Game Plan that revamped the state's incentive laws to modernize industrial recruitment. Governor Kay Ivey made the announcement Friday afternoon, lauding Canfield for his service, saying he will go down as one of Alabama's greatest ever economic developers. Ivey has tapped Ellen McNair of the Montgomery Chamber of Commerce to become the new Secretary of Commerce in the new year. Alabama's latest jobs report is out with some mixed news. The state's unemployment rate for September was 2.2%. That's up slightly from the all-time low of 2.1% in August. The state has been focused more on the workforce participation rate, which measures the percentage of able-bodied individuals over 16 either working or looking for work. That rate remained at 57% for September as state leaders look for ways to encourage more people to join the workforce. We reported earlier this year on the financial troubles at Birmingham Southern College that threatened to close the institution. This week, the college filed suit against the state of Alabama after it was denied an emergency loan by the state treasurer's office. The Alabama legislature earlier this year created a distressed college loan fund when it opted against a direct bailout of the college. But the loans require an application and approval process. State Treasurer Young Boozer's office said because of the litigation, it could not comment on the reasons why the loan application was denied. A hearing on the lawsuit is set for Wednesday. This week, charter school administrators, advocates, and some students gathered in Birmingham for the New Schools for Alabama annual conference. The event featured a legislative panel discussion about the future of charter schools, including a push to get equitable funding from the legislature, plus a keynote speech from Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth.
Charter schools are going to play a role in making sure we're competitive in a 21st century economy. It's going to do that. And, we're just getting started in Alabama. We're going to continue to grow that. And, it's not the only answer, but it's certainly part of the solution. I think, my belief is this in education. I think parents should decide what's best for their children. And whether that's a charter school, whether it's a public school, whether it's a private school, everybody's different in what they need to do, whether it's a homeschool situation. I think really parents need to decide what's best.
With the governance changes that we did get through this year, I think that we're going to see really just a snowball effect. The one that we hoped we would see in 16 and 17 and 18, and we did not. But I think now we're in a place where we're going to really be moving forward, and who's going to benefit is the children of Alabama.
Oftentimes they stand in one lane but I've forced them to start looking at outcomes. As a parent, as a former teacher myself, but as a parent, outcomes matter. Having your child in a school that gives your child the options and the ability to be the rigor of the curriculum to be increased and advanced based upon where your child is instead of that child being stagnant is always important.
We are singularly focused on funding and making sure that we're closing. We have about a $2,400 per student average gap between what a district school gets and what a charter school gets. Those are both public schools. Charter schools held to higher standards than your district schools, but they're getting less money to be able to meet that higher standard.
Each year we have a different theme, and the theme this year is really about the power of partnerships. And so one of the incredible things we're seeing in the charter school movement these days is that a number of new partners in public education are coming to the table to provide unique opportunities for kids. So we've got a movement among HBCUs in Alabama to help establish charter schools on their campus. We have other institutions of higher education coming to the table like University of West Alabama. And then we have a bunch of folks in the nonprofit sector and even the public sector, the private sector, that are coming and bringing new opportunities for kids that are kind of creating these break-the-mold charter schools and their tuition-free public education opportunities. So it's really exciting, and that's what we're trying to accomplish here.
Checking in now with Alabama's congressional delegation in Washington. The House of Representatives is still without a speaker, more than 2 weeks after Kevin McCarthy was removed. House Republicans this week nominated Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan for the job, but he could not win the majority needed to win the gavel after 3 floor votes. Each of Alabama's Republican members of Congress voted for Jordan for Speaker each time, with lone Democrat Terry Sewell voting for her party's nominee. House Republicans are expected to regroup and discuss a way forward on Monday. On the other side of the Capitol, continued focus on Israel. U.S. Senator Katie Britt is on her way to the Middle East right now with a bipartisan group of senators with plans to meet with leaders and reaffirm our country's support for Israel as war rages in the Holy Land.
As a mom, as an American, and as a Christian, I am absolutely horrified by what we've seen. On our trip, my colleagues and I will advocate for stability in the Middle East as we work towards long-term sustainable peace that keeps Americans safe at home and abroad. I will continue to work with colleagues on both sides of the aisle in the days and weeks and months ahead to ensure that Israel has everything it needs.
And U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville is speaking out against President Joe Biden's decision to send $100 million in humanitarian aid to Gaza. While the aid is meant to ease suffering of the civilians devastated by bombings, Tuberville argues it will end up in the wrong hands.
This week, I signed onto legislation that would redirect American aid to the Palestinians and use it to strengthen Israel's Iron Dome. Joe Biden says he wants to cut the Palestinians' check for $100 million. I am absolutely opposed to this. Humanitarian aid that goes to Gaza will ultimately wind up in the hands of Hamas, the terrorist.
More and more communities around Alabama are welcoming the state's help to add charging stations for electric vehicles. Capitol Journal's Randy Scott reports again on that growing trend.
We're very excited about all the growth that we have. I had a groundbreaking on a new hotel just yesterday. It seems like every week or every month something new is going on, and we're very proud of that, whether it's on 231 or downtown.
Troy, Alabama Mayor Jason Reeves is very upbeat about his community and its expansion. That development means new businesses, growth at Troy University, and infrastructure upgrades, including new access for electric vehicles.
One of the things that we've got going on right now is we actually ordered 2 EV vehicles for our utility system. And so as a part of getting ready for, as you said, 231, serves as the interstate for Southeast Alabama. And we want to make sure that people who drive electric vehicles, that we don't miss out on that traffic.
The motto for the city of Troy is a wonderful place to live. Leaders here want to improve on that by improving the infrastructure of this area, by doing things like this, bringing in more electric vehicle charging stations for the increased numbers of electric vehicles coming to this area.
I've heard it said that people going to the beach and talking about shortcuts to the beach, it all starts with go to Troy and. So we want to make sure they still go to Troy and.
Highway 231 helps fuel this area's economy, bringing people to the city or to Troy University, or serving as a major travel route through the state. Mayor Reeves says it's time for upgrades such as charging stations.
We're actually looking at doing something with ADECA and some of the things that they're doing to try to partner with either one of our properties, a private property, or a nonprofit property that would serve a really good purpose and provide those chargers.
Paving the way for more business within Troy.
We've really invested a lot in the infrastructure of our downtown with sidewalks, with recruiting new businesses, and we also, the actual first electric charger that we put in is actually down there.
Spelling more progress for the city, says Mayor Reeves.
We have a couple of spaces that people can pull in downtown to our shopping, dining, entertainment area, plug in their vehicles, and enjoy beautiful historic downtown Troy.
For Capital Journal, I'm Randy Scott.
We'll be right back with tonight's guests.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
Joining me next is John McMillan, Executive Director of the Alabama Medical Cannabis Commission. Mr. McMillan, thanks for coming on Capital Journal.
Thank you, Todd. It's great to be with you again.
Well, we've had you on the show for a couple of times as this process has gone forward, but over the last several months, it's really been a busy time for you guys. Been a lots in the news, lots in the courts, and everything like that. Can you kind of bring us up to speed on where the Cannabis Commission is? I know there's been litigation. I know there's been multiple meetings, but where are we right now in terms of the process?
Well, the simple answer is that after some negotiations between the lawyers representing the commission and representing applicants, we finally decided we would just come together with our own plan for how we move forward. There was a little give and take, a little what everybody wanted, but nothing that satisfied everybody. But we've adopted those rule changes and amendments, and now at our next meeting on the 26th, next week, we anticipate the commission moving forward with that plan.
There's been all these lawsuits. I think we called it a flurry of lawsuits that y'all have had to deal with. That has really slowed down the process. It really goes back to that original scoring flaw, right? And I hope you could sort of explain what happened way back when in that scoring situation that sort of was the impetus for all this.
Well, let me preface that by saying every state's had to deal with lawsuits. Florida's been doing this 7 or 8 years, and they still got lawsuits. Georgia, longer than we have, and they still got lawsuits. Arkansas, maybe even worse, and I'll stop there, just with nearby states.
So
but anyway,
we're not alone in the whole
right. That's been the process, and it's kind of like Judge Anderson said the other day. You know, the root of this problem is, and he's right, that the legislature put a cap on the number of licenses that can be issued. So anything, let me say that the lawsuits have been extremely frustrating. Sometimes it makes us want to bite our elbows when you see some of the allegations that just really don't mean anything. But anyway, the commission asked us to come up with a process where we didn't just throw it in their lap and say, okay, you got these applications, go make a decision. That the applications themselves, the total package of applications was over 100,000 pages, for example. So we came up with a system in conjunction with the University of South Alabama to let objective evaluators go through those different components and evaluate the exhibits and score them, and they were trained and vetted and all of those things. Unfortunately, when we got the information, and it was one of the factors that the commissioners made their decisions on in the original awarding of licenses, there was a mistake. So we immediately got with the University of South Alabama. You know Joe Bonner, we called him when we saw it, and he said, we found it, we fix it. So they did 2 internal audits of the whole thing, and got KMPG to do an audit of the whole thing. And so now we're confident about the scoring process as far as we are concerned. Unfortunately, as we said earlier, the lawyers, that are not happy because they didn't. Out of the 38 integrated applicants, only 5 can get licenses, and so we wound up. No matter what we do, we're going to have 5 very happy people and 33 to one degree or another unhappy. So that's where we are.
Well, and you're talking about $1 million businesses, right? I mean, this
multi-million
is
dollars,
huge
especially
business.
the integrators. That's extremely expensive. The numbers we hear $10 to $20 million to do the whole thing, and that means the from the seed to the cultivation to the processing to the transporting to the lab work, and then all the way to the dispensaries where these products will be sold. So it's expensive, and apparently there's a lot of money in it. It's all a cash business until Congress acts on the safe banking legislation, which Young Boozer has been leading that charge on behalf of the State Treasurers Association to try to get that done, and we seem to be getting a little closer on that. So that's going to help everything.
I was hoping you could explain that a little bit, because really this all goes back to if marijuana was not classified as a drug the way it is, narcotic the way it is at the federal level, we really wouldn't be in this situation, because pharmacies would be doing this, right?
That's right.
And so because it's like that, a whole commission process, a whole different outside of the normal medical, prescription platform. But there is this banking situation that could help resolve some of that. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, just the way you laid it out, banking, and now there is some headway because we're over 40 states now that have medical cannabis, one form or another. So some banks are going ahead, and we hear that there are a couple of banks in Alabama that are willing to go ahead and move forward with ordinary banking services. But generally, no, it's illegal, as you said, because of the classification of the drug, and there's even an effort going on at the national level through DEA to change the classification. Right now, marijuana is the same classification as cocaine and other really sure enough high-level drugs that we don't believe are as addictive and that sort of thing, and don't have the medical positives that cannabis does. So, and plenty of disagreement on that as well, but that's what the Alabama law was intended to provide, this product at a safe, quality level to patients in Alabama that need it badly.
I know you can't really get much into the litigation that's going on because it's still ongoing. There was a hearing, I guess, yesterday. But in your estimation, how close are we to seeing at least some resolution in the courts to really allow the commission to move forward? What's your best guess?
Well, because the bottom line answer is tell me how many more lawsuits. But if the commission is allowed to go forward with the rules that we adopted and amendments at the last meeting, we should be able to have licenses issued, and there's a distinction between awarding and issuing, and that's something people might want to get into.
Oh, please do, yeah.
Well, let me go ahead and finish that answer. We believe that we can have licenses issued by the end of the year. I like to say by Christmas, because that'd be a great gift for folks that need the product so bad. But the legislation is set up that first the licenses are awarded, and then there's a process including payment of fees and so forth for about another 28 days before they're actually issued. So that's how that plays out, and it's misunderstood, and certainly, obviously, as this legislation is extremely complex, and when you add our complex rules and regulations and other procedures into it, it even gets more complex. I find myself having to go to some of these younger folks that are on the staff that are much more technologically savvy than I am to get questions answered about it. So I understand that. But we feel good about the changes that we made. I think I'd say over the last month or so, we really have started to make some headway. I think Judge Anderson, over the last 2 hearings we've had, he seems extremely interested and intent in seeing this program get up and get running, and certainly that's a big help.
Mm-hmm. Well, we report on it, and there's so much in the press, but there's probably a lot we don't know about what happens behind the scenes at the commission with your staff. Can you kind of take us behind the scenes and what's been going on? Because I know y'all, whenever there's lawsuits, you've got to be very careful about what you say publicly, right? Like coming on the show, things like that. So can you, at this point, sort of walk us through maybe some of the behind the scenes of what's gone on these last several months at the commission as these lawsuits have played out?
Thank you so much. We don't get an opportunity. What we are doing as a staff is letting the lawyers do the negotiation and the recommendations to us and the commission. So that's kind of pushed aside, not out of mind for sure. But yeah, our staff has just done some amazing things in addition to the whole application process. Which in itself was extremely lengthy and complex. But we have negotiated contracts, for example, the Medical Association Board of Medical Examiners could not have been more helpful, as has every other state entity, the Revenue Department, Agriculture and Industries, ALEA with patient cards and all of that too, just fantastic. But anyway, so we've negotiated a contract for the doctor-patient registry. We have negotiated a contract for the tracking, and that tracking system is just absolutely astounding. It takes, when we have the licenses issued, it takes that product from the seed all the way through the sale at the dispensary by the individual plant. At an early stage, I think maybe 8 inches or so, each plant is given a designation and a number, and even the waste part of that plant that's not utilized for medical products has to be accounted for. So it's just amazing how that system works. We've gotten that done. ALEA has worked with us tremendously to start thinking about how we're going to put together the patient ID cards, very much like a driver's license, that sort of thing. And that patient registry will keep up not only with not a prescription, but a recommendation from the time the doctor makes it till that patient goes and buys it at a dispensary. And if a patient goes to a dispensary in Montgomery and buys a product, and then later in the day tries to do the same thing in Birmingham, it's already in the system, and they'll be cut off right then. So it's that part of it is complex. And don't forget, when this is all said and done and we get this program up and running, we're going to be a regulatory agency more than anything else. Occasionally over time, I'm sure there'll be more applications put in the system and gone through, but this is the big one to get through this initial round of applications and the challenges that go along with getting back to the integrator thing with 38 applicants who each think they did the very best application anybody could do and didn't get a license. So that's where the lawsuits come in. But yeah, that's an important thing, and another thing that's overlooked and not mentioned really because it's overshadowed so by litigation. But we'll be responsible not only for the regulatory part of it, but enforcing things and being sure. You know, we mentioned before we talked on the air about, and we didn't get to the ABC, but in years past we talked about how these things could have been misused. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody that's been around very long understands some of the issues back in the day, and thank goodness that largely been addressed now. But that's the kind of thing we are trying to lay the groundwork for, so that later on when we start getting to the disciplinary actions and fines and that sort of thing, you know, we don't have a legislator that calls up and said, my buddy's got a dispenser and you're fining him, do something about it. We're going to say, sorry, that's the way the system is set up, and that's what we're going to do.
You're talking about, you know, being by the book, having a process, having a procedure that's all recorded, all, you know, on paper, rather than kind of the good old boy system of, hey, well, yeah, my cousin has my friend in whatever county, because it matters down the line. And you mentioned these procedures. I remember the debate in the legislature for really a couple of years before they passed the bill.
3 years actually.
Mm-hmm. The ones who were opposed, the ones that were skeptical, and folks still today really wanted to avoid this becoming a recreational product, right? Mm-hmm. Becoming California or Colorado. Do you think these procedures that you've put in place, you talk about working with ALEA, you talk about the list, do you think we have the laws and the procedures in place where Alabamians can be confident that it's not going to be like other states and a recreational product?
Yeah, absolutely we will have and do have. We're ready. We've already hired, for example, a compliance officer. We've had to put off hiring inspectors, he has, because litigation is eating up our funding, a lot of it. So, but yeah, and of course that's something that ultimately the legislature will have to make a decision on whether to go recreational. Of the 40-yard that have medical cannabis, 20-yard, just say 40-20, have also gone on to recreational. That's something that this commission is not going to support, and I hope the legislature won't do it. But there are 2 or 3 things that need to be, people need to be aware of. First of all, this product with the cash only, no health insurance, is going to be an expensive product. And our major mission is to provide that product to the patients that need it, but also in a safe, quality area, manner. And that's the reason the labs and all of that are very important. But also bear in mind, nothing we do is going to interfere with the illegal black market out there on the street.
Sure.
And so that's an important thing for people to bear in mind, because they're going to have to make, some people are going to make decisions, or have to make decisions, you know, do I go to a doctor and get this recommendation, or do I go out here and buy the cheap thing on the street and take a chance on getting fentanyl or something that's going to wipe me out? So there's a lot to be done and a lot to be dealt with as we move forward once we get these licenses out.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, we've gotten kind of lost in the weeds of policy and litigation and all of that, but I think it's important to remind folks why this exists in the first place. There are folks out there dealing with illnesses that maybe current drugs don't help with, or they're dealing with pain, long-term debilitating illnesses. Talk about the need out there and what this product, what this medical marijuana, medical cannabis, how it can help patients in need.
Well, in the legislation, you know, the number of illnesses that can be recommended for this is prescribed. So we've got that as part of the equation. But, you know, one of the things that really distresses me is the number of people I see that have got family members out of state where it's legal, where recreational is legal and cannabis medical is legal, mailing products in or bringing products in. And that's disturbing that they have to do that. Number one, break the law to get the medicine. But also at the same time, there's the feds, on one hand, all of this is illegal, and on the other hand, they are issuing grants to research like the impact and potential impact with veterans and PTSD and those kinds of things. So there's obviously a need for it. It's a plant-based medicine. It's not a synthetic like many of the opioids are that are so much more addictive, and so that's an important part of this thing. And another reason I think the legislature took a hard look at that part of the equation when they were looking at whether to pass this legislation or not.
Mm-hmm. An important reminder. Well, we're out of time. Thank you so much for coming on and explaining some of this stuff, and I hope we can have you back maybe later in the year when we get closer to things coming on market.
I look forward to the day of coming back and saying we've issued all the licenses and we're in business now and we're providing patients a quality, safe product.
We will have you back then. Thanks again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. You're watching Alabama Public Television.
Joining me next is Montgomery Mayor Stephen Reed. Mayor, thanks for coming on Capital Journal.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I should say recently re-elected Mayor Stephen Reed.
That's always good.
Congratulations on your re-election.
Thank you so much. Glad that people, saw the confidence in us to put us back in for another 4 years.
What was your main message as you were running for re-election? they're always off-year elections, so they're kind of isolated.
Yeah.
Not like there's a presidential or Congress and all that kind of stuff. So you're kind of on an island there a little bit. How did you go about messaging that and actually getting people to the polls on an off-year election?
Well, I think for us at the local level, it's good to be on an off-year cycle because you get a chance to really drill down into the government that impacts people the most. And one of the things we talked about were not only our successes, but some of the things that we want to improve upon. And whether that's public safety and whether that's improving the economic viability of our city, those are things that we want to continue to build on. And I think the overriding message was that we've done some very good work, but there's more work for us to do. And I think the community likes the direction that we're going in, and that's why we won by the margin that we did.
And it was a convincing margin, but it was contested. You had an opponent,
Sure.
and there were those out there opposing you and everything. Specifically, toward the end, it got a little chippy, especially on the issue of crime.
Yeah.
And yet you won convincingly. So when you win like that, and yet issues are brought up, like on crime, what does that communicate to you? Is it we've got work to do, as you said? Like, what's the takeaway? Does it concern you that others are concerned about that?
No, I think it's good. I think we all want to reduce crime across our community, and it has been a priority for me since running 4 years ago. And when you see that come out in the campaign, or whether you're knocking on doors and you're talking to people in restaurants or small businesses or in their communities, you know that it hits home. And I think what it says to us is what we're doing isn't enough, and we've got to figure out some new tactics and new strategies to improve the results. And it's not just on the reactive side; it's also being proactive, investing in community centers, investing in the programming that's in those community centers, providing those wraparound services and helping those providers that already do that, and then of course working with our school system to make sure that those that are in the schools have a great opportunity to see what the future can be like if they get a certification, where they go to a 2-year or 4-year college, or if they go right into the workforce, to make sure that we're pushing a quality of place and pushing the opportunity index all around our city, even in neighborhoods where they may not feel like it reaches them.
Those investments would prevent crime in the future rather than, like you said, being reactive to it. Well, you've written a book, and this is pretty cool. I mean, you're on this book tour. I saw that you were down at New South Books doing a book signing. Tell me about it. And I guess the easiest question, or maybe not so easy, but the more basic question is, what's your book about?
Well, the book is a memoir, about my path to becoming the first black mayor of Montgomery, Alabama. And it is really one that shares the pearls of wisdom that I gained from my father and my mother, but also so many, so many in their generation. I've been blessed to really have access, and didn't always appreciate it, to people who helped change not only Montgomery but this nation. And those visits, those conversations along the way have helped me deal with a lot of things, whether that was personally or professionally or even politically, that I want to share with the next generation. And one of the things I wanted to be sure that I put in this book was, the transparent wins, the transparent lessons, not losses, but those successes and some of those setbacks that I've had personally and professionally. And I think that's important for us to show with leaders and those that are coming behind us, in particular in the Gen Z and millennial generation, that it's not always a direct line. Sometimes life zigs and zags on you, but you have to be able to work through those things. And I think the memoir is a lesson that a lot of people can take different, have different takeaways and different interpretations from. But ultimately, I hope that it inspires and encourages a new generation of leaders to go even further than where we have so far.
Some big names mentioned in your book. I mean, Hank Aaron, of course your dad, but you got Hank Aaron.
Yeah, he wasn't the home run king.
Hank Aaron, Fred Gray.
Yeah.
I mean, what's it like to have have stories involving these giants?
It's amazing, and again, it wasn't something that I really appreciated growing up. I'm not even really sure I appreciated it even into my adulthood. It was just what we were afforded, and at that time, I'm trying to play sports. I'm playing, high school and college football, all those things. You're not really thinking about, who this person is and what they have done. I appreciated Mrs. King when she would stay at our house because she was from the same community my mother and her family were from in Perry County. Now, I appreciated that, but not enough to ask my dad if she could go to school with me at the time and to get a funny response that I lay out in the book. But also, meeting presidents, meeting senators, meeting congressmen, mayors, people who just influence and change, but also those grassroots activists, those people who didn't have the position of mayor, who didn't have the position of city councilman or state senator and state representative, who still through sheer will and commitment pushed Alabama and pushed this nation forward in a way that just would not be denied. And that is the inspiration to me, and I hope that's the inspiration to those who, again, we hope will read the book, those young leaders who have access to technology, have access to great social media platforms, and can do so much, but may not know how to channel that energy or the purpose that they may have.
Mm-hmm. And how can people get this book?
Well, they can go to New South Books, certainly here in Montgomery, and pick it up, or any independent bookstore that they may have in their city. But certainly it's online on Amazon and Barnes & Noble's, Books A Million, Target, Walmart, all the major retailers are carrying it. It's a Penguin Random House publication, and so we're excited to have had the opportunity to have a major publisher be interested in this book and to help us promote it.
Now look, when you go and write a book, it really, a memoir especially, it really raises the question about your ambitions, right? And your political ambitions.
Yeah, that always goes right with it.
I mean, come on, this is the world.
That's right.
So let me ask you, we've gone through redistricting.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're paying attention to all those district lines. So that second district is now completely different.
Mm-hmm.
The way, going all the way into Mobile and everything, it is a very good opportunity for a Democratic candidate to win the congressional district. It also includes all of Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you've heard people talk about, you running for Congress. So is that a consideration? Are you considering running? I mean, it's something you probably need to decide pretty soon.
Yeah, first of all, it's always humbling to be thought of for a higher office and for something where you can serve the community and, of course, serve the nation at a higher level. I think, anyone would not be honored by that. So to be in that discussion is great, and I think it's a testimony to the work that I've done in public service and the impact that we've had, and also what I think people believe we can do to help not only the 2nd Congressional District, but the state of Alabama and the nation and beyond. So it's a consideration, but it's not anything I've made a decision on yet. When I think about public office, and this goes back to when I ran for probate judge, my thought is, how can I make a difference, a positive difference? What's the path to trying to make that difference? And then, who do you need to help you accomplish it? It's not so much for the title or the position for me, it's really in the outcome. And that's been my approach even as mayor, is understanding, how I can make a difference, who I need to bring with me in order to get it done, and then how do you make sure that you're making a positive impact. The thing about Congress is it provides a great opportunity to take many of the things that we're doing here in Montgomery to the federal level. What I'm not sure of is whether or not it presents a better opportunity to bring about positive change for Montgomery and for areas that are surrounding our city. Now, make no mistake about it. I mean, I would be for somebody who is from here to represent that seat and to be considered among all those that certainly could run, whether those are other elected officials or those that are in the private sector. All of that's a plus for me. I think at the end of the day, it'll come down to being a personal decision between myself and my family, as well as our close circle of friends and advisors, but also where can we make the difference and how do we create the agenda to make the difference? And I've got some, questions about, Congress, can you still do that?
Well,
and that's why I seek out, different thoughts on those issues.
That's kind of what I was thinking, is that when you look at Washington right now, it's just, well, and a lot of that's on the Republican side, a lot of the chaos and everything. But as a whole, I mean, it's just really dysfunctional. And so I don't know, To some, that could serve as a deterrent. To some, it could serve as a challenge.
Yeah.
You know, what do you think?
You know, I think it's an opportunity, certainly, and I tend to look at things from the positive and not as a deterrent. But the question, you know, for me ultimately is, you know, you've got a great chance. You just asked the people to reelect you for 4 years. Got some great momentum, economic development wise. Education has been improving. We got some great projects in the hopper right now. Do you leave that position to go take on that challenge and take on that opportunity? And that's kind of what I'm still, filtering out various opinions on, and to get that feedback. And for me, that is as if not more important than, just trying to run for office to be able to have a different title or a wider span of influence. What can you do to improve the lives of others is ultimately what it will come down for me. And then what's that impact, on my family and our circle of friends that we have as well.
Well, we will be watching, as will many others. But Mr. Mayor, thanks again for coming on the show.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
The famous goal line stand, one of the most celebrated moments in Alabama sports history. The Tide was leading the 1979 Sugar Bowl when Penn State moved the ball to within 10 inches of the goal line. Barry Krause and Marty Lyons leaped over the pile to stop Nittany Lions running back Mike Gooman and preserve the Tide's victory. The win handed Coach Paul Bear Bryant his 5th national championship.
Joining me next is Courtney Wilburn of the Alabama State Department of Education. Courtney, thanks for coming on Capital Journal.
So glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I wanted to let you offer your official title because it's a little lengthy, but you deal with the Governor's Turnaround Schools Initiative.
I do. So I am with the State Department of Education, and my role is to serve as the administrator over the Governor's Turnaround Initiative.
Well, I've been excited to have you on because this is an important initiative. The governor's been traveling around at this beginning of the school year to all these turnaround schools, or most of them at least. And we've talked to Dr. Mackey about it, and I think he described it as one of the most exciting things he's been a part of in education. Yes. But I wanted to get kind of into the weeds about it, really granular. Can you talk about the Turnaround Initiative, where it came from, and what it really is its aims are?
Sure. So this is Governor Ivey's brainchild. She has come up with 15 schools across the state of Alabama. They're represented by 8 school districts across the state. And Governor Ivey saw that there needed to be some collaboration amongst state agencies, State Department, local schools, to really kind of all come together and serve our kids. And so that's what she's done. She created the Governor's Turnaround Initiative. And so the State Department kind of serves as the liaison, the coordinator for all the things that are going on with the initiative.
Mm-hmm. So describe what it means to be a turnaround school. Obviously, struggling performance, but also other community factors.
Absolutely. So what we wanted was to have representation from a lot of different types of schools. So we've got some inner city schools, we've got some extremely rural schools, but we wanted to have representation so that any school across the state of Alabama could look at our list of schools and find one that matches their demographics, their location, and really look to that school to find out some best practices for turning schools around. So at the end of this initiative, the main charge from the governor's office has been create a blueprint that we can then use to turn around schools across the state.
Yeah, I was going to ask if that would expand, right? More, because there are obviously more than just that many struggling schools.
Right.
So will there be more added to the list, or is it going to be something else?
So the 15 schools will remain the 15 schools for the length of the initiative. But what we hope And what is already happening is we've got other districts and other schools that are reaching out to say, hey, can we come and watch how this meeting transpires? Or could you tell us a little bit more about how you're funding this particular program in the school? So already we've got people reaching out to us to kind of find out what's going on in these schools so that they can turn it around in their schools as well.
Wow, that's exciting. And I want to get to some of the more community partnerships, but take me inside the school. When you become a turnaround school and you get this this focus from the state, what happens? What happens there in the school on the ground?
So 2 of the most exciting things that we've done, my favorite things that we've done, we hosted meet and greets, which sounds real simplistic on the surface, but what we did with each local school, we sat down with the school administrator, with the district leaders, and we invited in partners from the State Department and from other agencies across the state that serve that school. So we've invited AMSTI partners to the table, OSI partners to the table. We've got ARI, MTSS, a lot of the initiatives that come from the State Department, not the directors, but the actual specialists who serve each of those schools. So we had 15 of these meet and greets hosted at the school. We came in and we all just sat down around a table and said, here are some immediate needs. ARI, how can you help with this? OMI, what would you see as your role in this support? And so that collaboration has been one of the coolest things that's happened.
Everybody finally communicating in one school, yeah.
Yes, and so, and that turns into our technology and motion specialist working with the AMSTI specialist like, hey, we're both doing these digital literacy standards. Why don't you do this component and we'll come in and support this component? So it's just been really cool building those partnerships. So that was our first step. We got in, introduced everybody that's a player at that particular school, and the person from the State Department in OSI. So I've got 4 specialists that are in the 15 schools. So those 4 specialists kind of serve as the air traffic controller, if you will, so that the principal doesn't have to remember 27 people and what their agencies do. They go to their one OSI person and say, hey, I need this.
Office of School Improvement.
Office of School Improvement, yes. And so the Office of School Improvement specialist then says, let me reach out to the AMSTI representative. They can come in and help with that. So we've not only go in to support the schools, but we kind of coordinate other agencies and the support that they offer.
Right, because it's not just a State Department thing. You've got the governor's charges for DHR, mental health, other agencies, because the way you described it to me before was this is a holistic view. It's not just the school itself, but the community at large.
Right. So in order for this to be sustainable, which is what we want after this initiative is quote unquote over, we want it to be able to continue. And so the partnerships that Governor Ivey has given us access to, we've got Department of Human Resources, Department of Mental Health, Amp Up Arts, and Department of Early Childhood Ed. So those 4 agencies specifically have joined in this partnership with us, and they are bringing to the table a wealth of resources that just the State Department of Education alone doesn't have access to. And so bringing in those outside agencies has allowed us to do a lot more in the schools in terms of community building. We want the parents involved, but we also want local churches. We want the men's groups who go in and support schools to come into these particular schools. And so coordinating all of that has been a part of the initiative as well. We did the meet and greets, but we've also conducted instructional audits in all 15 schools.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Yes, so the audits, we go in, and the Governor's Turnaround Initiative is tied directly to the 4 domains of rapid school improvement. So we're looking specifically at turnaround leadership, culture, we're looking at instruction, all, the things that make schools successful. So we go in and perform audits where we're looking specifically at those 4 things, and we're seeing how do they develop teachers in this school? Are the professional development needs being met? What does the culture of this school feel like? Are we flexible and welcoming to other people coming in the school besides just the students and teachers? Do we have a place for parents to come and provide some insight into what their thoughts are about the school? And so we've gone in, and all of our partnerships that we've mentioned, came in on those audits with us. It was the people who are serving the schools. So we're doing classroom observations. We're interviewing parents. We've got kids that are coming in and giving us their thoughts on the way things operate in these schools. And so we compile all of that information and have a final report that we can give the school that says, these are the things that are going amazingly well. Because let me tell you, all 15 of these schools already had some incredible things in place. It wasn't that these schools were places you didn't want to be. They have some tremendous things going on. These schools just needed some support that they didn't have, and so we're able to give them that support. But we're able to kind of coordinate resources based on those audits. Where did we see?
When you have the information, you can have all the good intentions in the world, but unless you actually have the information about what's wrong and what can be fixed.
Right.
So I see that. I did want to ask you this. That, there have been initiatives in the past. Go back decades. Everybody's wanted to fix troubled schools. So how is this different than previous efforts in the past that were, again, well-intentioned but maybe didn't have the success that we wanted?
Sure. So the funding component of this initiative obviously will have an end date. The governor has been so generous in her funding of this initiative. What doesn't have an end date, though, is the relationship that we are building amongst agencies within the State Department and agencies across the state. That doesn't have an end time. So Department of Mental Health, Amp Up Arts, they have a part to play in this that will continue even after the governor's initiative is not what's pulling everybody together.
So in this building, the State House, where the legislature meets, we talk about laws a lot, right? And of course, funding as well. And so the two most recent laws as related to education policy are the Literacy Act, which, big deadline coming up on that, and the Numeracy Act, both really focused on those younger grades. So I'm curious how those laws impact what the turnaround initiative.
Sure. So all 15 schools have an elementary division of the school. We've got several that are K-8 schools, but all of them have K through 3 in their buildings. And so obviously the Numeracy Act and the Literacy Act are things that we have to keep in the back of our mind. The Office of School Improvement is relying very heavy on our friends in ARI and the Office of Mathematics Improvement to make sure that we are keeping in mind what's regulated through the law. They are the specialists in that. But that has helped to drive a lot of the support that we are giving. So Governor Ivey has put auxiliary teachers in play for K through 3 classrooms. So typically that's been something that's been in a pre-K classroom. She's extended that opportunity. So now in kindergarten through 3rd grade classrooms, all 15 of these schools have an opportunity to have another person to help get the kids ready so that we are meeting everything that's required by those laws.
Now look, this is so early, and I hate to even ask this, but everybody wants to know, how this is going so far. Are there any results yet we can point to? I know when the governor was visiting the schools, she talked about some of the promise that she saw in some of her visits. So what are we seeing from the early indicators of the turnaround initiative?
We do have some data that has come in already. Since the schools have been a part of this initiative, many of our schools have come off of either it was formerly known as the failing schools list. Several of our schools were on that list and have been cleared from that list already.
Well, that's terrific news.
Some of our schools were comprehensive support schools, so our CSI schools, they have rolled off of that list. Not everybody in every school is off of every list. But what we want people to understand, the governor's turnaround initiative, this list is not a list of failing schools. This is a list of schools that we really see enough promise in that they can then be a blueprint for other schools. And so that data has already come in. Obviously, we're waiting on report cards to come out so that we can see improvement in the report card data. But what we've done in all 15 schools is set up a very specific progress monitoring system for whatever that school was already using. So we are looking at that data even when it's not official state level report data that's coming out. We're keeping an eye on benchmark data as we're progress monitoring. and we're seeing these schools are already growing. I cannot wait to see what the end result is when all of the state reports start coming out. It's going to be incredible, but it's already leaning in that direction.
Well, like you said, if you're creating that blueprint, it can go well beyond what you're just these 15
Right.
schools. I mean, there's plenty of schools that could probably use a lot of that information.
Right.
And, I can just, a lot of our audience are lawmakers themselves. So you might get a lot of questions about that.
Sure.
From individual lawmakers, about schools in their districts.
Absolutely. And any communication, we are shouting from the rooftops all of the good things that are happening with this turnaround initiative. So we welcome the opportunity to talk to anybody about what we're doing and what that's going to turn into for each of the schools.
Well, it's exciting. I really appreciate you coming on the show to really take us inside the initiative, and I hope you'll come back and share even more results when we get them.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us, and thank you for allowing us to spread the great news about the governor's turnaround initiative.
You bet. Good luck.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
The Cahaba lily, named for the Cahaba River, is an aquatic plant native to the major river systems of Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. In Alabama, its best known natural habitat is the shoals of the Cahaba River. The lily is known for the striking beauty of its 3-inch wide white flowers. Each flower's 6 petals surround a thin corona, which connects the lower portions of the stamens. The lily's scientific name, Hymenocallis coronaria, translated as beautiful crown-like membrane, accurately depicts these characteristics. The lily requires a very specialized habitat of swift-flowing water over rocks and an open canopy. The plant's bulbs and seeds spend the winter buried in the rocky riverbed. Leaves begin to emerge above the waterline in mid-April. Flowering commences in mid-May, reaching its peak in late May and early June. The showy flowers attract a variety of pollinators as well as large numbers of canoers and kayakers during the spring blooming period.
That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week at the same time with more Capital Journal right here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.